Welcome to the Parenting Puzzle podcast with Dr. Daniela Owen, the podcast where we attempt to solve the parenting puzzle together.
Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the Parenting Puzzle with Dr. Daniela Owen. How you doing, Dr. D?
I'm great. How are you, Jake?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm actually thawing out. So I have to say this because it was a magnificent thing. I live in South Louisiana. So if you can think of this, it's hard to understand because a lot of people don't think the world goes past New Orleans, but I actually live about an hour southwest of New Orleans. So like deep south, and we got about 12 inches of snow last week. So it was one of those they said it hasn't happened in 120 years.
Whoa.
So it was really crazy. So we're thawing out here, but I'm very excited about this podcast today. Another edition. We've got an amazing guest coming on the Speedster Squad hotline. Just to remind everybody, my name is Jake Loop. I'm the host. I am just a regular person. Dr. D is the star of the show and brings the expertise. But I am just a dad of two boys that is trying to make sense of this thing we call parenting. As we say all the time, parenting is really, really hard, full stop. I think we should make shirts, Dr. D. That would be awesome. Okay. But it's hard. It's really hard. And sometimes it feels like you're like trugging through it and hoping not to mess your kids up forever. So in this podcast, we really wanted to have a forum and just an easy thing that people can access to get really quick, easy, useful tips that are easy to apply to everyday life. Super excited about the topic we have today because I already know from talking to Dr. D and Kimberly that this is something that I've seen with my boys. So I'm really excited. Dr. D, I don't know if you have anything you want to say to start us off, but then we'll introduce our guest.
Just welcome. And as you always say, we're happy to have any parents on. We're hoping to get good evidence-based information into the ears and hands of parents who can use it. So we welcome parents to get in touch with us if you want to be on the show.
Trying to get good information into the world. So Miss Kimberly, let me start off by saying it takes a little bit of bravery to come on a podcast like this. I know for even myself and Dr. D, it's a little bit outside of our norm. So we're stretching our comfort zone just a little bit doing something like this. But we're so happy that you're able to come on and take part of this, Miss Kimberly. So I'll just turn it over for you. We're going to let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your parenting journey, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Well, I'm so happy to be here, and I'm joining you from Northern California. I think one of the only places there wasn't snow this past week, but it's still cold. And I have 4 kids. So my oldest is almost 12 and my youngest is almost 6, and then 2 in between. So, I've been a parent for a little while now, but I still feel like, need to learn new things every day, and there are new challenges that come with each new stage. But yeah, I had one question in particular that has come up kind of a number of times throughout the years. And it involves when you have multiple kids and, it's one child's birthday or one child's dance recital or one child gets to go to the sleepover with grandma. And, I see it the most in birthdays, but the other kids just are not happy for that child who is getting to shine in the moment. My second child is opening presents and another one of them is like grumping in the corner, or maybe quietly, maybe not even, maybe kind of actively, bringing down the situation. Or, one child says, I don't want to go watch, so-and-so's game or recital or something because that's not my thing. And it can be really discouraging as a parent because, you want your child who's having this special moment to be able to enjoy that and not kind of have something that's a downer happening around them. And you don't really know what to do with the child who's having a hard time. And I feel like in generations past of parenting, if I think about how maybe the parents from our generation would have dealt with it, they would have maybe said to the child having a hard time, like, get over it. It's your sister's birthday. Like, don't ruin this day. And I know we're not supposed to do that anymore, but I also feel like you can go so far the other direction and like be on this, very peaceful parenting journey and try to cater so much to the kid who's having the hard feelings and like honor those hard feelings so much that then you're doing a disservice to the kid who's like supposed to be having their day. So I don't know where the happy medium is, or if that kind of, kind of, I don't know, like different strategies resonate with you and kind of where you can land somewhere that feels responsible to everybody.
Hey, Kimberly, you're doing better than me because I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that.
Well, I like mostly I just buy parenting books, and I feel like if you just buy them and they sit there, you're a good parent. But occasionally I do read them.
Okay.
Mostly I'm just the consumer, and then they sit waiting, like looking at me, waiting to be read.
Because I've definitely told one of my boys before, hey, stop it. It's your brother's birthday. Have fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that there's probably a place for that. And I'm laughing too, because there may be also kind of like regional differences in parenting trends. Yeah. And I live kind of in the epicenter of like, let's celebrate every feeling and moment, this like soft and fuzzy Northern California vibe. But yeah, maybe sometimes you have to be like, stop it. This isn't your day.
Parents all over the country. So this is such a good question. This shows up all the time for parents. So I really appreciate you bringing this to us and recognizing this, because I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of parents. So, you're right. Generally speaking, we don't want to do the kind of get over it mentality and attitude towards kids for a couple reasons. Number one, it doesn't usually work very well. So if your goal is to not have a moper, a lot of times saying things like get over it is just going to keep that kid moping, right? And it's for a few reasons. So when a kid is moping because it's not their birthday, they're feeling the lack of special attention. They're feeling the lack of all the warm, fuzzy feelings. They might be experiencing some jealousy or upset. And so there's a lot going on in there. And when kids don't feel like they're being understood or heard or seen, they tend to double down, not ease up. So that's why, generally speaking, that strategy in and of itself is not particularly helpful. Here's what is helpful. What's helpful is starting by validating their feelings. So it's going to be a two-step process. The first step is going to be to validate their feelings. So just to pause and say, I can see that you're looking pretty grumpy. I get that you're bummed out that it's not your birthday today. I understand that you're sad that you're not getting as much attention because it's your sister's day to shine and all of her friends are here. So you want to validate that experience. If they share the feeling with you, use their words. If they don't, use what you're observing. And if you're not sure, you could use kind of a general term, like it looks like you're kind of bummed, right? So that's sort of more general than really sad or jealous. So you want to let them know that you hear them, that you see them. And when we validate kids' emotions, really great things happen. And most importantly, kids don't feel like they have to defend or pretend, right? So they don't have to defend themselves for feeling that way. It's reasonable to be jealous if your sibling is opening a pile of presents and you have none. That's a normal emotional response to that situation. So you don't have to defend yourself, or you don't have to pretend to be happy for them when really you're fuming inside. It tends to let kids just feel their feelings, and it conveys the message from the parent that you understand that they're feeling that way and that you accept them for feeling that way. Okay? And then when they don't have to defend themselves, when they don't have to pretend, when they don't have to double down to make sure they've really got your attention, then you can come in with the second piece. And for some parents, this is like in the next breath. And for some parents, this is like 15 minutes later when you've given your kid a little chance to kind of let that sink in and cool down. And you're the expert on your kids, so you probably have a general gauge of when that is. But the next thing you want to do is then say something along the lines of, I bet if you look around, you can find something to enjoy today. right? So maybe there are really yummy birthday treats that they can have, or maybe there's a fun bounce house for them to go bounce on. And what you're doing when you say this is you're letting them know they can hold both things together. They can be jealous and they can be laughing. They can be sad and they can have fun. And you're kind of giving them permission to have both of those. They don't have to show you that they're upset for you to know that they're upset. And they're allowed to have fun. And you're telling them, I hear that you're bummed out. I get that you're jealous. I understand. It's hard to watch your sibling open a bunch of presents. And I bet if you look around, you're going to find something here that you would enjoy. Now you're letting them have both of these emotions and letting them know that you're aware of those. And that is probably your best shot at them having a better time.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the amazing thing, right? Because part of you are describing how it can be so hard as the parent because you want the kid whose birthday or recital or soccer game or whatever to feel special and celebrated because it is important for them and it's important for you. By having their sibling moping, you feel bad for them, right? You want that to stop. You want them to have a great time. The best shot you've got is if their sibling starts to have fun too, then they're going to see that. The kid whose birthday it is going to see that, and they're the most likely to have a good response to that as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they don't necessarily need their sibling to come up to them and say, happy birthday. That's not helpful, especially if you've got the eye roll going on. But just seeing their sibling playing or enjoying a birthday cupcake or something, then they feel like their sibling is part of the celebration, and that's going to help them feel celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. And I'm also just thinking of kind of timing and logistics. Like, is it something that you would maybe do prior to the opening of presents just to, make it not start from the beginning? Or because I'm just thinking of, okay, like what if one child is actually in the physical place of opening the presents and the other child is having a meltdown? What do I do? Like, how do I pay attention to both? And again, like, how do I not stop the fun of the kid who's getting to open their birthday presents that happens once a year to like manage the feelings of the other one? What would that look like?
Such a good question. So the question about doing it ahead of time is an interesting one. If this is something that's happened multiple times, you might want to try to cut it off at the pass and say, in the past, I know it's been really tough when we've done birthday presents. I know it's hard to watch your sister or brother or sibling open presents in front of you. And so you can even discuss, if you want to be there, my expectation is that you are sitting there with a neutral or pleasant face, even if you're feeling kind of jealous or unhappy, and that you're not, going to be frowning or making negative comments. And if that seems too hard, let's figure out where else you can be or what else you can be doing at that time. And sometimes you might even kind of have that other child be helpful in some way so they're feeling good about themselves. Like, oh, do you think you could at that time be helping to, I don't know, hand out goodie bags or whatever it may be that would give them something to do? Or even just, hey, why don't you go chill and read in your room at that point?
Mm-hmm.
If it is something that comes up unexpectedly, I would ask the child who's opening presents, and let's say the other child's in the other room, like you explained, I would ask the child who's opening presents, do you think we could just hold on for 1 minute? I really don't want to miss anything, and I need to go just do something in the other room. And then I would just go and excuse yourself and go to the other child and say, listen, I know this is hard for you. I can see it. I can see that you don't like this moment. And it's your sibling's birthday, and it's really important that they get to have their full celebration. So what else can you do right now to be able to handle this? Or how can I help you in handling this?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to do what you said and give all the attention to that kid, or what you said sometimes is suggested in parenting, and give all the attention to that kid, because to your point earlier, then what's happening is that negative behavior gets reinforced. They're getting rewarded for doing that thing that's not great for their sibling and even not great for themselves. So you don't want to spend a long time on that conversation. That conversation needs to be quick. And if they want to keep moping in the other room, you're going to know you did your part by letting them know that you understood what they're feeling and validating those feelings, and they're allowed to have those feelings, and that what they're doing, if they are going to keep doing it, you're not going to keep attending to it, right? So if they're wailing in the next room with the door wide open, you're going to close the door. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to close this door so that you can have your feelings in your space and we can keep doing the presence.
Okay.
Right? So you're kind of acknowledging it and you're allowing them to feel that way. And that's the really important part, because you're letting them know, I know how you're feeling. You're allowed to have your feelings. None of your feelings are wrong. But this behavior of interrupting this important part for your sibling, that part isn't okay. That's not working.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's helpful.
I had one quick thing, a part of your initial question, Kimberly, that I just want to make sure we hit on. So we talked about birthdays and presents, obviously. So, and I've seen this in my life too. I think part of it, you said recitals, sports games, stuff like that. And I've seen it in my life. Let's say one of the kids is doing great, had a great football game, recital, flag, whatever it is, and then and wins the game or whatever. But the other kid is just not happy or just not engaging with that. Is there another strategy there? Is it similar when you have one kid just not happy about somebody else's success?
So to directly respond to one sibling not being happy for their other sibling, it's kind of similar to, you just want to acknowledge, like, I can see that your brother had a phenomenal game and it was a big celebration and everyone's been giving him a lot of high fives, and it's been a very big positive day for him. And I get that can sometimes be hard or feel uncomfortable. And again, if they give you their own emotion language, use their words. And that's not the day that you're having, and I understand it. And you don't have to be happy for your sibling, or you don't have to celebrate your sibling. And this is not okay, whatever's happening. So if they're kind of saying something unkind or being unkind, if they're just kind of mopey, then I would be saying to the other sibling, you don't need to pay attention to him or her. Just let them have their feelings. They're having a hard time with this. And you did great. We're proud of you. Right? So you don't want to take away from the kid who's feeling celebrated. But at the same time, you want to let the other kid know that they don't have to necessarily be happy. Because I think, coming up again with what Kimberly was saying, kind of like historically, we'd say, be happy for your brother, tell your brother or sister that they did a great job. And if it's disingenuous, it's not really helpful for either of them. Right? And so kind of saying something that you don't really mean in a kind of unpleasant way isn't going to make the one who scored the game-winning goal feel good, and the other one might just feel more resentful, which is not our goal, right? Because that's not going to help them get out of that state faster. And that's really essentially what we're talking about. Like, we don't want them to be stuck brooding if they don't have to be. And you know what? Sometimes kids are going to brood, and that's okay. It's not dangerous. But if we let them know, we get it, that's hard. You might be feeling jealous or upset, or you might have had a hard week. It's really hard when you have a hard week to have your sibling have such a good day or a good game or a good week. That's hard. I get that. Now all of a sudden they're feeling heard by you, right? They're having this emotional experience and you're saying, I understand how you're feeling. I hear you. And so for kids, a lot of times that creates a sense of connection rather than disconnect, and making them feel more alone, which might produce more of the brooding. Again, so then if you can follow it up with, is there something that, would brighten up your day? You could say, for example, to the kid who didn't score the game-winning goal and is kind of feeling kind of sour, and see what they say. And if it's like, hey, if you just need some time to yourself, go take it. I get it. And so it's not about catering so much and giving a ton of attention when they're doing this thing that's, this emotional reaction that's unpleasant to the other family members, but it's letting them know that you see them and they're allowed to have that feeling, and that you are there to support them in feeling a different way or feeling another way in addition to.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, I think the question is really good and resonates, and like from the parent perspective, you hope that someday your kids will be happy for each other or will be happy for friends. That's a one of the goals of raising siblings or raising kind of good humans. Is there a glimmer of hope there, even if it's hard for your kids when they're little? Is it just not developmentally expected that they would do that at a certain age? What does that look like?
That's exactly right. So at some point, we get better at like seeing ourselves as individuals and others as individuals, and we get better at like we can be upset for ourselves and happy for them at the same time. That's pretty complicated when
Yeah.
you're
It's hard for grown-ups sometimes too.
You're right. It is hard for grown-ups.
This
and some
guy.
grown-ups are better at it than others. But as we develop from adolescence to young adulthood to adulthood, that process becomes like we get better at that. And so, or most of us do. And so, part of that is going to be developmentally appropriate. And if they don't feel like they were constantly invalidated as a child, they weren't allowed to have their feelings, they really had to show you and double down, that's likely to build up more resentment. Like, everyone just told me to put a happy face on and deal with it and suck it up when I was a kid. That's not going to help them really kind of go through that experience and kind of come out a more developed adult necessarily. But if they're allowed to feel upset and also be present for those events, you're setting them up to do better as they get older, right? And the other thing you can do is if they're better at doing it, let's say for a friend than a sibling, there might be less jealousy involved. It might be just more logical to them that, this person isn't in their family, and so they're not living under the same roof with all this great new pile of presents or whatever. You can also comment when they do a great job as a friend. Say, you were a really good friend today when so-and-so scored the game-winning game and you were really kind and celebrating for them. Or anytime you see it happening, just noticing, I noticed that must have made them feel really good, or that was really cool that you did that, right? And so now they're getting this positive reinforcing experience when they are doing it, and they're being noticed in that moment too. It's not necessarily going to change them from pouting at their sibling's birthday party, but what you're doing there is you're connecting the dots for them, that they felt good when they did that for their friends, which is probably why they reacted that way. And then their friend probably felt good. So it was kind of a win-win. And you're kind of saying, that was a great situation, right? And so they're going to file that away. And whether they pull it back out at 13 or 33, I can't promise. But I think that is the thing that sets them up to be able to do it better in the future, is when they don't feel like they have to prove it to you and really kind of sit in that upset or anger or jealousy because nobody understands and, nobody gets it. It's like, yeah, of course you're going to feel that way. It's hard to watch someone open a bunch of stuff and not get anything yourself. You're allowed to feel that way. And when kids have a permission to feel a certain way, tends to make that emotion less sticky, right? They can just kind of like feel it and then kind of move on to the next emotion.
Dr. D, I'm just figuring it out and I'm 33.
Jake, you got a lot of years to keep figuring this out. Kudos to you.
It's interesting one thing you said about the sports analogy. So I coach flag football for my son's 8U team. And like every week at the end of the game, and we got a good team, by the way, I give like the game ball, right? And it's so interesting. And it goes back to the development. And like these kids are 8, 7 years old, some of them 6. And the majority of them had the reaction of, oh, I should have won that game ball. So they have the reaction of jealousy. So it's an interesting point about like reinforcing the positive behavior when you see it, right? Because I've definitely seen my 8-year-old when somebody else won the game ball and not him, he was happy for that person. So like reinforcing that behavior. But it just seems like it's so common with kids of all ages, right? That when somebody else gets something that they think they should have got, they're not happy about it. I mean, I've even had kids crying over, I didn't get the game ball this week and I thought I should have got it. And I got to pull them aside and be like, hey, it's okay. Maybe you can get the next one. It's going to be okay. So, Kimberly, what I'm trying to say in my long-winded way is you're not alone. I think myself included, and maybe Dr. D too, a lot of people are dealing with this. That's why we're so happy that you brought these questions to us today. You got anything else for us, Kimberly? I want to give you the floor one more time.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think this was great. I love the tip to point out positive behavior when you see it. And I think that it applies to so many parenting situations. And sometimes it does feel kind of silly, like, oh, thank you for brushing your teeth before you went to bed. You don't always remember that to say that. You often remember to say, you didn't brush your teeth, like go brush your teeth. But it's so powerful. And I think, everyone in the world, adults and kids alike, like to be noticed when they're doing something great. So I love that advice, and it applies in so many situations.
And to take your point to take what you said one point further, if your child does turn it around, let's say at the birthday party, and they were moping, and then you say, I'm sure you can find something you'll enjoy if you look around. And then, 20 minutes later, they're laughing and having fun. Being able to say, you did an amazing job turning it around. And so they are, to your point, getting that positive feedback for taking that step, being willing to come out of that mopey mood, let themselves enjoy themselves. And that's really powerful. And you're right, saying, I love that you brushed your teeth tonight without prompting. That was really cool. Kids remember that the next night. That feels good. And even though maybe our spouses don't tell us, thank you for brushing your teeth, or thank you for brushing without prompting.
I'm going to tell my husband to tell me that tonight.
Some version of that is really, to your point, it always feels good to hear, no matter how old you are, right? So it's a really good and valid point that you make. And Jake, I really appreciate you bringing up the flag football example, because obviously you're working on instilling good sportsmanship in your team, but that's actually a kind of good way to think about it within your family too, right? So instilling good sportsmanship, encouraging kids to make good choices, even if it's not, they don't necessarily get the game ball for winning the game, but they get the game ball for the best sportsmanship, right? For your team maybe. And in a family also, just encouraging good sort of family sportsmanship and treating each other with kindness and respect, and being able to be helpful at a sibling's birthday party if you don't feel like playing or whatever it may be. All of those things are things that you can encourage and celebrate, and those are all going to make your kids feel good.
Awesome. Dr. D, you ready for my favorite segment? All right, let's do it.
Okay, so I said this earlier, but I'm just going to repeat if I could give one takeaway message from today, is that when you validate a kid's emotions, they don't have to defend or pretend how they're feeling. And that lets them feel heard and understood. And the best way to help kids move out of a sour emotion or an upset emotion or a grumpy emotion is for you to let them know that it's okay that they're feeling that way, and you accept them feeling that way. And then you and they are in the best position for them to kind of move on for that emotional state, or for you to encourage them to find something that might be enjoyable for them in that moment, so that they don't have to stay committed and stuck in that state. So validating kids' emotions doesn't mean agreeing with them, and it doesn't mean agreeing with their behaviors, right? But it's just saying, I hear that you're feeling this way. I understand that you're feeling this way, and that's okay. It's my final word.
Yeah, I think it's a great final word. Great job, Dr. D. We're getting better at that. We're more on it now. It's awesome. Okay, so I'll wrap this up here. Kimberly, thank you so much for taking the time. This was an amazing episode. I told you we wouldn't be under 20 minutes. So
it's okay. It's okay.
It was awesome. So thank you so much for coming on, asking such thoughtful questions. It helped me. I hope it helped you, and I hope it helped our audience. So
for sure.
If you ever want to come back on, just let us know. We would love to have you or your husband.
I have an unlimited amount of parenting questions. So, yes.
You can make this a recurring episode. And real quick before I wrap it up, just if you like the podcast, if you've been watching and you've been getting some good tips like Kimberly and I have, please, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Dr. D has a YouTube channel. Instagram. I also have a YouTube channel where you can access this information. So please, the best way to help us is to like, share, comment, subscribe. We just want to continue to put good parenting tips out there because parenting is so challenging. But thank you guys for tuning in. Hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review. It really helps us out and lets others discover the show.